More on our top story, and it may not have been the great victory that Donald Trump had claimed, but the US president also didn't take the beating that some were expecting in America's midterm elections. His party lost control of half of Congress, but strengthened its hold in the other half. Joining me now is Peter Mathews, a political analyst and commentator. Hello, thanks for joining us here on Sky World News. Now, let's put it politely. You've been around a very long time. You know how these things work. Is the results what was to be expected? Many had foreseen that the Republicans would keep the Senate, yet lose control of the House of Representatives.
Yes. In fact, I saw that a few weeks before. I was looking at the various polls and the trending in the polls, and it came out to be that they would, in fact, lose the House and they would keep the Senate, maybe even add a seat or two in the Senate. And it looks like it turned out just the same way. In fact, I was on the night before and I predicted exactly that. So it wasn't a surprise to anyone, but it has major ramifications, of course.
Such as?
A very serious one. Yeah. Such as, for example, one thing is that the president would be blocked by some of his programs that he wants to get through because both houses of Congress have to vote for it for him to be able to sign it into law. But with one house in the hands of Democrats, they're going to block quite a few of his programs, especially such as more tax cuts, which will drive the deficit up even further. And they probably block the wall, which has not taken off any of the wall that he wants to build on the Mexican border. And many other things, immigration reform, they will actually be able to block some of the negative aspects of his policies. And most importantly, impeachment is on the horizon now. And there's a very good possibility that the House, if he does what he did today, in fact, he did fire Jeff Sessions. He's saying that Jeff Sessions, the Attorney General, resigned, but the president asked him to resign. It was more of a firing. And there's some real serious questions being raised because of that right now.
Right, I want to go back a little bit. You talk about impeachment. Is that a real possibility? Some are saying, you know, put that on hold. That's not going to happen now. You need to get on with the legislative programme and this will hold things up.
Well, there are two things that you have to consider when you ask that question and you raise it up. And that is the fact that, today he fired the Attorney General who had recused himself and refused to get involved with the impeachment supervision because he didn't want to have conflict of interest. And so he had Rod Rosenstein, the Deputy Attorney General, handling it, who appointed Bob Mueller to be the investigative special counsel. And that's been going on very long now, and Bob Mueller must have come up with some really big information about it because there have been several indictments and, in fact, some criminal pleas from many of Trump's associates. And this is very serious. So the president himself hasn't been accused yet of anything, but Mueller's done a lot of research. And furthermore, the question arises, why did he fire Sessions right now? Does he want to control what Mueller comes up with? Does he want to block an investigation? In which case, that could be considered to be possible obstruction of justice. Now we're getting into very serious waters that even Democrats and maybe some Republicans cannot deny. So he's not in a better shape now after the Democrats took over the House, that's for sure.
Isn't it his right to fire whoever he wants?
That's correct, but it depends on his intent. If he fires someone because he just thinks the person, let's say the Attorney General, is not doing the job properly, or whatever reason he gives, is fine as long as he doesn't have any kind of intent where it's nefarious, where he's actually trying to better himself, do something for himself as a favor, firing the Attorney General so that he wouldn't face any kind of serious investigation or charges. That would be actually semi-criminal intent. The intent is very important. What was his intent in firing Sessions? That's very important, and that has to be ascertained. And that can only happen through investigations by the Special Counsel Office, more important, by Congress. The House Judiciary Committee will start investigations and could actually look into what was his intent. And don't forget, all the committees in Congress and the House now are going to be chaired by Democrats, and not like it was before by Republicans in both houses, the chairpersons were. Now the chairpersons in the House of Representatives are all going to be Democrats, and they can have a lot of subpoena power. They can ask him to produce his tax returns, for example, investigate his financial dealings. He's not in better shape now than he was before the election. It's actually quite a bit worse for him in a sense.
And is this why perhaps he's opened this idea of a new concept of bipartisanship, as he puts it? A good chance, in his press conference earlier, a good chance to get along with Democrats?
He has to reach out to them in that sense because he knows that there's some severe repercussions coming anyway. And he wants to kind of, soft pedal it, kind of get them on his side to say, we can work together. Don't be hostile toward me. We have things to do. We have to get budgets passed. We should do things to get the economy rolling. Infrastructure spending is important. They could agree on that. He wants to divert. I mean, those are important things because that's what Congress is supposed to do with the president, is pass policies that would help the American people. At the same time, that's also a distraction from the very serious investigative role of Congress that will be actually performed right now by the House. Congress has the power to investigate the executive branch, and that's part of the oversight power in the Constitution. He wants to kind of like soft pedal that part of it by focusing more on issues. And let's see if he really will be serious about getting an infrastructure bill pushed through Congress yet. He hasn't been doing it yet. Even with the Republican Congress, he hasn't had an infrastructure bill passed through.
Now, he's claimed the results as an almost complete victory for him. Other people would completely disagree. And he's very busy, you know, a few hours, as we mentioned there, firing Jeff Sessions, and also this attack on the CNN White House correspondent, Jim Acosta. Clearly, the president was getting very annoyed with him. But now this line's come out from the White House that the official reason is that he touched the hand of this intern.
Yeah, and I don't know if that was true or not because I saw the incident. I watched it on television. I saw Jim Acosta and the other reporters right there, and the president going back and forth with him. And I remember that the intern tried to take the microphone away from Jim Acosta, but Jim Acosta held on to it. I don't know if he ever even touched her in any way or put his hands on her, or whatever Trump is claiming. I think the film will show what happened exactly. I think the president's trying to get out of this situation right now because he didn't handle that situation with Jim Acosta and CNN very well at all. He looked like a bully who's trying to shut down a reporter asking legitimate questions. And then he's also attacking CNN once again as being an enemy of the people. And that's unacceptable for any president to call any media friendly or hostile in any way, an enemy of the people just because he doesn't agree with their questions. He needs to answer questions. That's what democracy is about. You have a question session in your parliament in Britain, and the prime minister answers those questions. I think it's a great democratic practice.
Well, what do Americans make of this language, fake news and enemy of the people?
I think it's horrendous, and most thinking Americans, the ones who are rational, who do critical thinking, and who do believe that democracy requires a vigilant population, those Americans they're flabbergasted by this kind of phrasing. There's been no other president that has ever used that type of phraseology, and it's very disturbing. It's very dangerous, and Americans, the majority of us, believe that he needs to stop it right now and become more presidential, more accepting, more accommodating with the opposition, and treat everyone as human beings. We are not enemies of each other. No one's an enemy of the state here because they disagree with the president. He should look at them with respect and dignity, as we do in a democracy and should do in a democracy. And no other president's acted this way before. So many Americans are very concerned. Of course, there's a minority of Americans that are gung-ho supporters of his, maybe 35%, who are cheering him on, basically. And that's not going to be enough for him to win re-election in 2020 or to run the country effectively right now.
And that's exactly what I wanted to talk to you about. Effectively, these results give him the mandate to run for another 2 years. He would have done anyway. So what can we foresee in the second half of his presidency? How will it look?
It would be nice if he could compromise and work things out through a consensus with Democrats to bring together issues that they hold in common, such as investing in American infrastructure. The American Society of Civil Engineers came up with a recommendation of $5 trillion needed to rebuild our roads, our bridges, our water systems, and he's even proposing even less than that, but the Democrats will push him to spend more and create more jobs. If they could use common ground to push policies that are for the common good, that would be really good. I don't really see that happening necessarily at this time because of the fact that the Democrats, many of them, are not going to give up on getting the truth of whether there was any kind of conspiracy or collusion between this campaign and Russian interests. We have to see what's going on with Mueller's report that'll be coming out pretty soon, I think. And one thing we make sure is that Mueller does not get shut down by this president, and no Democrat will stand for that. He's creating a constitutional crisis the way he's behaving right now. And I really hope that he would settle down and be more presidential and accept the rule of law principle. It'd be much better for the country and for him.
So pretty much more of the same, but the Democrats have got the mandate to put on pressure.
Yes, they do. They certainly do. Look at the kind of landslide victory that they had yesterday with so many groups of people, some of whom voted for Trump before. For example, suburban women, who are 60% of whom, and most of them are all Republicans, and those suburban white women voters living in the suburbs, 60% voted for the Democrats yesterday. It's unheard of. The majority of them voted for Trump back in 2016. So he's losing certain supporters among more moderate Republicans, whom he had somewhat back then. he's losing them also, and he's going to be in big trouble if he isn't already in terms of political ensuring his political base and support base, which seems to be like it could deteriorate at any time if he keeps on this pretty extreme activity and kinds of activities he's doing regarding the rule of law and accepting the judgments that should be coming down in some way or the other.
Well, certainly interesting times, as they have been for the past few years. All right, Peter Mathews, we'll have to leave it there. Many thanks indeed for your analysis. That is Peter Mathews, political analyst and commentator, joining us here on Sky World News. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much.